So, we've come to the end of the month and I finally read a couple of books which I would like to share with you. And these books that I'm sharing with you are the books that I managed to sort of read. I didn't finish all of them to the very end, but I've read enough that I can actually share with you. So my goal this month was to read at least 10 books, but I was able to read 6 books because life happens the way it happens. And if you know, I literally just read non-fiction books. So when you read non-fiction, most of them are like practical books that you actually have to put into practice if you want to get any results of anything that you're reading. If you're the kind of person that loves to read self-help books or you're starting your self journey, then this particular video or this channel will help you to sort of get to that level, because for every video that I make, I try as much as I can to incorporate, the books that I've read that have helped me understand that particular topic that I'm talking about and share with you. Anyway, let's get into the actual video. I read 6 books, which I'm going to share with you here. And these books that I read, I'm going to rate them from 4-star, 5-star. But this is just a personal preference. And I'll tell you reason as to why I have rated them that kind of rating, only based on me. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't pick up these books and read them, because it could be a book that would literally save you. Just because I know something doesn't mean that you shouldn't pick up the book based on my own review. Please do stick to the end, because I'm going to be sharing some of the books that I did pick up that I'm going to read very soon. Not precisely next month or within a couple of days, but books that I'm definitely going to be reading, okay? So, the first book I want to share with you is You Can Be an Optimistic by Lucy McDonald. And this book says, change your thinking and change your life. Now, I picked up this book because I really love the title, number one. And I looked through it and I was like, okay, cool, I'll actually read this book. Now, this book comes from a perspective of being an optimistic rather than a pessimistic. It tells you that, in every situation, in everything in life, you have to look at the brighter side, have hope, always turn around every hard situation, every problem in any situation, family, work, money, health, everything, and be a little bit optimistic, because when you're optimistic, you tend to live longer. That's what they say. Optimistic people live longer because they have something to hope for. It also has a section here that I really love, that it says that depressive realism is the tendency of depressed people to see things as they are. It says that people who are depressed make more accurate judgments, but the clarity of their outlook is one of the things that makes them unhappy. Okay, so one of the things I liked about this book, You Can Be an Optimistic, is literally this journal over here. And this is, if I can sort of remember, it is your optimistic journal. Yes, it's your optimistic journal. It is so good. I feel like I wish she made a journal out of this. I'll try and do my research and see if she's made a journal. But this is one of the parts of the book that I thought I would photocopy and literally keep and use and maybe make my own journal. Maybe in the future, I'll make a journal based on this in my own way to kind of like make it make sense. Now, for me, I read this book at 2-star, and the only reason as to why I read this book at 2-star, I know you might be surprised, is because there are certain topics that I feel like they don't need a whole book. They only need like 10 pages to explain exactly what it is. For example, being an optimistic, you don't need so many pages to explain. It's really washed down, in my opinion. It talks about being optimistic in your health, being optimistic in illnesses, when you argue with family, with managing stress, with living with hope, and all those kind of things, which are really beautiful things. But for me, as someone who reads quite a lot of self-help books, I can tell from the beginning of the book whether I'm going to like it, whether this book is something that is going to be resourceful for me or not. And this was one of the books that at the beginning I really liked it, but the more I dived into it, I felt like it was more diluted and it was repetitive, and I'm like, there's not much you can say about being an optimistic person, in a way, but it's like it's creating more and more topics to talk about. If you're someone who really loves things like that, this book would be for you. But for me, as a reader, I would definitely say that it's not a book I really enjoyed reading. But anyway, it's a great book anyway. So next book I picked up is Difficult Conversations, and this one is a New York Times bestseller. It is by Douglas Stone, Bruce Patton, and Sheila Hane. Now, this particular book sparked my interest because I'm trying to understand how conversations happen, how people talk, how to communicate effectively, because your communication really determines the end result of anything in life. Now, this book in itself is just a nice, soft book. I absolutely love the softness of this book. It says you need to approach conversations from a more curious point of view than a judgmental point of view. It says in every conversation you have, be more curious. Don't come from a point of, I know it all. I know where this conversation is ending. I've had this story before. But no, be very open, because what you do not know is literally what you do not know. You cannot fill in the gaps of the things that you do not know. So be the person that wants to know all to get to the root bottom of the conversation. Now, the particular thing as to why I absolutely love this book, it's because it gives examples of conversations that have been had, and at the end of the conversation or the end of the communication they had, something bad happened. But then it goes ahead and dissects that conversation and tells you to see, the conversation from the other person's view and from the other person's view to understand what the problem was and how it could have been turned around. It is just a book that is written so well that I absolutely love. For example, it says, "For if we are fragile, we are also remarkably silent." I love the way the book is written. I just love everything it says. It says, "Delivering a difficult message is like throwing a hand grenade coated with sugar. Thrown hard or soft, a hard grenade is still going to damage. It doesn't matter. Whatever grenade you shoot is still going to cause some damage." It tells you how conversations matter. Conversations build businesses, break businesses, start wars, end wars, just because of something flipped on the other end. It also makes you look at things from a perspective of, what if these people are going through this and they reacted based on what I say to them, type of thing. So if I would recommend any book from all this, would be this book. I rate it 5-star, and I would definitely tell you, pick up this book, read it. If you're someone who struggles with conversations, how to have better conversations, how to start businesses, end businesses, negotiate, do everything, friendships, relationships, everything. When I started reading this book, my conversations with people changed, and the way I was approaching conversation was absolutely different because of this book. It is a game changer. I think I'm going to be reading this book, I think, once every month, so that I can grasp the concept of this book. It's not a book that I just want to read once and put away. It's a book that I want to read very frequently because I love it so much. It's well written. 5-star. Mwah. So the next book I read is Money Mindset by Brian Carruthers. Now, this particular book is one of the books that I read first in this month. It's the book that I picked up and I was like, okay, you know what? Let me just read it. You never know. It's just going to be repetitive when it comes to money. If I could tell you that this book itself is quite expensive. For how small it is, it's a very expensive book. It delivers to the point, to the T. It gives you exactly what you should be looking for. One of the main things that I took away from this book is that money rules the world. We all need money. We say that, oh my God, I want to be free. I want to, live a comfortable life. Living a comfortable life is having enough money to live comfortably enough. Having a well-being that can comfortably put you in a situation. No one wants to be living on the street. Everybody wants a house or a building or wherever they want to go. And all those things require money. Nobody could lie to you and say, you know what, money is nothing to me. I don't need money. In the world that we live in, everything is by exchange, and by exchange of money. At some point we need it. It has always existed, in different forms, sometimes in souls, sometimes in coins, sometimes in stones, in whatever way. A form of money has always existed for years and years and years. Now, in this book, it gives you breakdowns of how you can actually become financially free. I don't think you can actually become very wealthy by reading these books, because I just believe, sometimes the environments you grow in, the books you read, the people you surround yourself with, the families you grow in, sometimes determine your wealth and also determine how wealthy you're going to be or rich you're going to be. But this serves as a guideline for someone who wants to have a little bit more money for themselves and do more with the money that they've got. So it talks about things like, pay yourself first. It's very important that you pay yourself first. It talks about saving in a different perspective of, like, we always think that I'm going to save for that new bag, I'm going to save for that house. But it says, what if you just put money aside just for the sake of it, not because you want to save a particular thing? And when the time comes when you actually need the money, you can actually pick it out and use it for whatever thing you want to, do. For some people, they have a goal, to save for a house. And once they have got that house, what next? That's the question he puts, here. He also talks about the aspect of giving, why it's very important to give. I really have a full video where I talk about things that he talked about in this particular book. He talks about good debt and bad debt. And, there is no such thing as bad debt. It's just, debts that, accumulate due to the interest rate. At the end of this book, he talks about also things like investment and stocks and stuff like that, which I did not read because I'm planning to have a whole, reading spree of just investment and stocks and all that kind of thing. So I'm holding up onto that because I feel like it's information that I have to be fully prepared to dissect in. That's towards the end of the book. It's just a very good book. It always says, pay 10% of, the money that you get. When you get money, take 10% out. Yeah, it's a really good book. Budgeting and all aspects. It talks about building wealth and building net worth. It says you're not wealthy just because you're out of debt, which is really, really good, because we always aim to be out of debt and we think we're going to be wealthy for being out of debt, but it says no. Just because you're out of debt doesn't mean that you're going to be wealthy. So I would rate this book a 5-star, and I would say get yourself this book. It's hard to get a hold of. It's quite expensive. So if I link it down, pick up the book as soon as you can if you're really interested. And this year is for you to have a different mindset when it comes to money. I think this is going to be a competition to the Psychology of Money. I haven't read the Psychology of Money yet, but I will read the Psychology of Money soon, and I'll compare it to Money Mindset. So book number 3 is definitely Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdallah. I have a whole video where I talk about that book, and you know how I feel about that book. I read that book this month, and I was just like, wow. So the book, if you've not read the previous video, it is about this idea of that feel good makes you more productive. The feel good moment, that when you feel good, you tend to be more productive. The book itself is not your traditional sort of book that literally talks about things like drink more water, sleep early, eat well, all those kind of traditional things that they tell you to be more productive, use color-coded pencils or have highlighters or things like that, or read more, stuff like that, change your environment, go somewhere else and do things like that. It's not your traditional book that will talk about things like that. It's sort of a book that dives into the aspect of, the serotonin, the act of giving and your productivity, the aspect of the play, in an environment where you are, that if your work feels like play, if it feels very playful, if it feels like an environment that is very light, you're more prone to be more productive. Like, if you're in an environment at work and you're all playing around and serving customers and helping each other, teamwork goes up, productivity goes up, and the sales tend to go up. So it's kind of like it revolves around the feel good, aspect of life. This is why I love that book, and I read that book 5-star for the fact that it's not your only traditional book. I would recommend you to read that book or to listen to that book on Audible. It's so much better than when you actually read the book, because Ali himself, he narrates the whole book and he talks about every single thing. He talks about aspects of power, that when we have power and we have control over certain things, we are more likely to be productive. When the control is taken away from us, we become less productive because we feel like we don't have any slight change or any slight power to do things the way we want to do them. So I would say pick up that book. Absolutely love it. It's a game changer. It's a good book. If you want more insight into how I explain about the book, the parts that I read, the ones that I liked, I'll link it here, and then you can go and check out the full video. I did a whole video about that Feel Good Productivity book. The next book is literally attached, and this one is by Dr. Amiri Levin and Rachel Hiller. This book is one of those books that is like Atomic Habits. If you know Atomic Habits, you know Atomic Habits. Everybody talks about Atomic Habits, but Atomic Habits is not one of those books. Actually, let me just say Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's not one of those books that is TikTok famous for no reason, that is a Gen Z book for no reason. Actually, I commend the Gen Z people and TikTok for actually picking up this book, and talking about it, because it is a really good book. The book Atomic Habits is a really, really, really nice book, and I recommend anyone to read it. But when we get to this book attached, it's one of the books that everybody talks about. They talk about the magic of how this book is going to transform your relationships, the magic of how this book is going to make you so much better and understand your attachment style and how you're going to work on it. It's everywhere. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we're talking about attached, and we bought this book on Vinted. She got a copy. I'm not sure if she bought a copy, but I thought we might have had a conversation that would exchange the books, because I'm a faster reader than her. So we said, okay, you know what, we'll exchange ideas when it comes to, the books, and she'll read this book when she's absolutely ready, But I'll tell you something. This book did not start off on a good foot for me personally, okay? I haven't finished reading it. It's still got a marker in here. But I'll tell you this. If you really like the reviews that I do, I'll be honest with you and tell you the first 100 pages of this book are the most boring. bits of the book, okay? They're the books whereby you have to slowly think about how you're gonna get to the end, that it gets better. It's sort of those books that you have to put in the optimistic point of view, like have hope, it's gonna get better. You know, a lot of people say this book is good. What am I doing? Am I reading it wrong? No, you're not reading it wrong. The first few pages of the book are just talking about the attachment style. So let's just talk about the book in general. So this particular book talks about your attachment style. It talks about secure, avoidant, and anxious. And the good thing about the book, you're able to tell what kind of attachment style you have. You know, it tells you if you're avoidant, secure, you know, and anxious. And at the very beginning, it starts talking about how anxious attachment is, It gives examples of relationships, but it doesn't break down the relationship properly on the styles and how, you know, it could have been different. It doesn't really do that. There are a lot of blanks within the book that should have been addressed, in my own opinion. Now, it also says aspects that I really like, because when I got to page 112, that's when I said enjoying. No, I'm actually lying. When I got to page 102, that's when I said actually enjoying the book, where it talks about things like, you know, in the dating market, a lot of people have an avoidant, you know, attachment style, because avoidant attachment style are more likely to be on the market and searching for relationships. And avoidant can't go with avoidant. So you find that avoid the avoidant and they're in the market. It also says that people who are secure come on the market for a short time and then they're off the market. Is if you find someone who has an insecure attachment style, it's like capture that person, get that person, because those are the best people that you can have around you. Then he also says that anxious people can go well with secure people only on the fact that if the secure person can reassure their attachment, only on the fact that if the secure person can sort of like reassure the person that is anxious in that relationship, then the relationship will go better. It doesn't talk about ways in which, for now, as I've read the book, it doesn't talk about ways in which that anxious person can train themselves to be a more secure person. It sort of says, this is your attachment style, deal with it. These are the people you can date. The other thing that it says that it doesn't go deeply into it in scientific forms. It talks about aspects of like your attachment style is not the fact that something happened in your childhood, because we all know some of these things. They say, okay, in your childhood, yes, and this happened, this is why you have this attachment style, and you know, that kind of conversation. However, she says that that's not the case. Attachment styles have nothing to do with your childhood. They're very different. But she doesn't go deeply to explain, where did I get that attachment style? If you have an anxious attachment style, where did it come from? If you have a secure one, where did it come from? Like, let's talk about scientific things and, you know, go deeply into it and understand where the style came from. Because sometimes when you know, it makes things better. It makes you more aware. But he also talks about things like knowing what your partner's, you know, attachment style is and understanding what the attachment style is to make things better. But for me, it needs more meat. And I'll tell you next month, I'll remember to update you on what I think about the book as we get towards the end of the book. Maybe it has more information that I haven't yet got to. But for me, as of now, it has gaps. The book is missing the meat. Like, I need meat. If you're going to be this big, I need some good meat in it. But I can see all the way, you know, towards the end, it has good things that I feel like I like. I feel like I literally like in the book. So I'm not just kind of pushing it away, and I'm not going to say to myself, no, this is horrible. Okay? Let's be honest. I'll get to the end and I'll tell you what I think about it. But yeah, finally, I've read one of the most famous books and I thought I would love it so much, and I'm still figuring it out. So book number 6 that I read is like Don't Believe Everything That You Think by Joseph Nguyen. Now this book I listened to it on Audible. Absolutely amazing book. It takes 2 hours to read this book. It's a very short book, so you can literally finish it in 2 hours. It's like a series of different books, and I'm gonna try to listen to all the series and let you know as time goes on. They're really short, 2 hours. Some are 30 minutes, I think, if I'm right. And the aspect of thinking is so good. So I write everything on Notion. In a way, that's how I keep tabs of the books that I read. And I have notes here that I put on the book. Let me read some of the quotes that I liked from the book. It says, "You cannot change what you are not aware of. Once you are aware, you cannot change it. One who looks around him is intelligent. One who looks within is wise. We cannot solve problems by using the same level of consciousness we were at when we created them. That's by Albert Einstein, but it's a reference in the book. So the particular book itself, it talks about the difference between thinking and your thoughts, what your thoughts are. It teaches you how to divert away from your thinking and making it a thing that controls your world and rules your world. One of the good examples I liked in the book, it talks about, a scholar that went to a monk and said, teach me how to be more zen. And as the monk was explaining, he kept on interrupting this monk and literally talking about, his own things and, questioning this, questioning that, and interrupting the monk as the monk was trying to help him. So the monk asked him, can you come and have, a cup of tea with me? He was like, yeah, sure, I'll come and have a cup of tea with you. So as I sat down, the monk offered, to serve him the cup of tea. So as he was pouring the cup of tea, the monk just carried on pouring the cup of tea until the cup overflowed. And he carried on doing it over and over again until the tea started flowing on his cloth and on the table and on the floor. And then the scholar shouted, stop! Can't you see that the cup is overflowing, that the cup is full? And then the monk said to him, exactly. He said to him, you are like this cup, full of ideas that nothing else will fit in. He told the scholar, come back to me when your cup is empty and you're ready to be filled with more knowledge and understanding. So it tells you that when we fill our thoughts with a lot of things that do not build us, we do not create room for more things to come. It says that our thoughts govern every next step, everything that you do in every aspect of life. I would definitely tell you to just go and read the book because the book itself is just so beautiful and nice. And the other notes that I put on here that are quite nice and good is that anxiety is thought without control. Flow is control without thought. This is by James Clear, but he phrases this book. He says, we do our best work without thinking. When Olympians are competing, do they think that they are in thought of what to do? No, they don't think, they just act. They act on the peak state of that particular thing that they have to do. He also says that Japanese have a word for this called musin. This is when the mind is free of random thoughts, a state of no thinking but flow. We perform better when we're in a state of no thinking. So 5-star for that book. It's 2 hours. If you can get it on Audible, listen to it. It's going to change your perspective. Nothing will actually change your life until you decide to make it something that you want to change. But it's a good read. One of the very first books that I picked up is, Food for Life by Tim Spector. Now, this particular book, I like it because I listened to Tim Spector on the Diary of a CEO a couple of times, and he is quite, a good person when it comes to food and food for your mind and your microbiome. There are some reviews at the end. It says by Jamie Oliver. Jamie Oliver says, Tim's super interesting book takes a fresh look at food. It also has, a review from the Daily Mail that says no fads, no nonsense, just practical science, best advice on how to eat well. In the middle of the book, it talks about different types of food and what they're going to do for you. For example, it talks about pork, poultry, kimchi. It explains the food. It explains how, the results of the food when you eat it and stuff like that. But I'll talk about the book properly. I'm quite excited to read this book. Now, the other one is 4 Weeks to Better Sleep, and it is by Dr. Michael Mosley. This is also a new book that has just sort of come out this year or last year. It's an easy sort of read. I love easy books to read. They just kind of make me feel good. Now, it says 4 weeks to better sleep. I'm going to experiment and have this because it actually has 4 weeks of better sleep. It has Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It also has... I was gonna drop that. It also has here food stuff. What I liked about the book is at the end of it, it has recipes and meals that you can cook for lunch, brunch, on the move, light meals, heavy meals, the whole recipe, the cooking time, how to cook it and all that kind of thing. So just like, this book feels like, a cookbook in a way, but an explained cookbook, if that makes sense. So we're going to read that. The other one that I got that is not my typical type of book is The Undercover Economist. And this book is just so good. It talks about, is it bad marketing or is it the government? It talks about things like digital marketing. It talks about chips. It talks about, information, everything to do with economists, stuff like that. Other book itself, it says, Ever wondered why the gap between the rich and the poor nations is so great? Or why it's so difficult to get a foot on the property ladder? Or where the banks went wrong? This book offers the hidden story behind these and other forces that shape our day-to-day lives, often without our knowing. So, of course, you've got reviews here from the Times, the Times. It says, lovely and witty. After reading this book, a trip to the supermarket is an entirely different experience. Then The Economist as well. The Economist is an economist newspaper. It says a playful guide to economics of everyday life. And it also has here something from Martin Wolf. Do I know what that is? It sounds quite familiar, the name. It says, as Tim's Hatful demonstrates brilliantly in this enjoyable book, the powerful underlying ideas of economics can, in the hands of the right person, illuminate every aspect of the world we inhabit. I didn't understand a word of that at all, but we think that means good. But yeah, those are the books I'm going to read, and that's it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate your time, and let me know which one you're picking up and what you've really enjoyed about this particular review, or the books I've read, or something that I should improve on or put more, because you guys matter, because you're the reason as to why I make these videos, and without your opinions, then this would not exist. Anyway, thank you so much. I love you all.